Also, if you like, there's a nice relaxation technique of breathing in deeply and fully through the nose. And when you breathe in, take a full breath and hold the breath for a moment or two, and then slowly exhale through the mouth like you're blowing through a straw. Do this a few times if you like. It's a nice way just to kind of gather the mind, really kind of settle into the breath. Do this a few times, and then if it feels comfortable, you can move on to just coming back to a natural breath. And as you breathe, you might like to tune into the quality of the out breath in particular, and allow that out breath to be a kind of settling process, settling into the body on the out breath. Giving our mind and ourselves a space just to kind of be present, not having to be anywhere else, just kind of letting the day go. Our mind's very busy, that's okay. It's quiet, that's okay. And if you like, you could even try to bring part of your awareness down to your seat and the sit bones and your legs, feet. Allow it to help you connect with a sense of ground as you breathe. If you like, you could even imagine that every cell in your body is settling into this sense of ground. The whole body is just kind of relaxing and settling, connecting with the sense of ground as you breathe. And then before we start our discussion, maybe we can connect with a quality of intention. Recognizing this time we're going to spend together as an act of kindness, kind of an investment in our basic goodness as human beings, an act of compassion. And seeing that we're always in relationship and connected with the world that we live in. Holding the world in our intention as well. Little discussion, whatever positive energy we can create, an offering of kindness and peace. An expression of that value that we have in us, that values these qualities. Okay. Great, thank you. So, yeah, again, another nice small group chat. Last week was fun. It was really nice. Skylar, where are you calling in from?
I'm actually in Lakewood. I get to see you in April, right, for the retreat at Lama Yeshe House, April 3rd.
Do you think you'll come? Are you going to come in person or join by Zoom?
Sorry, you went real quiet. I'm gonna come in person, hopefully. Yeah, in person.
Oh, fantastic. gonna be a lot of fun. It's been a long time. I had in my school program that I'm doing, we had a intensive retreat actually up in the mountains in Colorado, up at Red Feather Lakes last November. That was kind of the first in-person thing a lot of us had done. And that first night we had like kind of everybody's getting settled and unpacked, and we had like a welcome dinner or whatever before classes started. And it was just an explosion of like the euphoria in the room was amazing. It felt surreal actually. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, it'll be nice to be in person again. Looking forward to it. Yeah, I mean, last week we just kind of opened it up. If there's any sort of interest, particular question, kind of inspiration that either of you have, any burning questions, confusions, open it up.
I guess one of my main things that I'm dealing with now is like, so they're calling us back into the office, after COVID, and I only go 1 day a week, but it seems like that 1 day, like I have this anxiety and this panic attack going back into the city and into the office. And I'm just wondering, like I try to, focus on my breathing all the way driving in there, but it does seem more like a physical thing, like a physical reaction in my body. And then all of a sudden my mind just kind of follows that physical action or response, I guess. But isn't it kind of the other way around? Like, isn't it the mind that is kind of determining the body, or like where does that, I don't know, am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Curious, is it kind of a new phenomenon? Is this kind of like a post-COVID range? Yeah, familiar anxiety.
No, it was even before COVID. So like I know there's a lot of, just bad memories around the city of Denver for me. So it is kind of like going east. Like the more I go east and the city closes in around me, and there's concrete buildings and the cars are so close, and it's, highway traffic, and I start to like panic, and I know, like, okay, I'm safe, like nobody's out to get me. And I try to, follow the peaceful thoughts, but it's like the body still kind of clinches in and is like, nope, you're wrong.
Yeah, I've been particularly drawn more to the body in recent years, because I'm oriented to kind of the head buzz. My energy likes to, my home nest likes to stay up here a lot. I think the body is a nice resource in the sense, so it could be the mind. There's definitely a relationship with the mind. But I find the body might have more of the answer in terms of the directness of the experience. And it actually, even if it is, if you're able to stay with the felt quality of the feeling, so we can call it anxiety, but if we can get maybe, and that can be helpful actually, just to maybe get distance, like, okay, oh, this anxiety is present, and I'm feeling anxious, and I'm noticing that I'm feeling anxious. That can start to kind of give us a little bit distance between the emotion. So a lot of the challenge is us kind of fusing with the emotion, where like our sense of self and the emotion. It's like there's no gap. It feels like the anxiety is going to overtake us, or it just very claustrophobic and kind of. So labeling can help in that. Like, I'm feeling anxious, and then you can be like, I'm noticing that I'm feeling anxious. Even can be like another step of helping give some space, and it's interesting effect actually, but very simple, and you do that kind of slowly. Sometimes that can help. Another way in actually can be maybe not using that kind of psychological language, but just getting into more like what it feels like in the body. So I'm noticing there's tension, or I'm noticing my breath is short, or maybe just going into the sensations, or like I'm sitting in my car and I'm feeling my legs on the seats and my hands on the wheel, and because that can actually, no matter what the feeling is, if we don't get caught in story, then it's just raw energy. And that raw energy actually can be really supportive for us, even if it is, what we say, kind of unpleasant energy, because it's just energy, and it's energy that's in the moment. And yeah, there's kind of two things that kind of get us in trouble to where it becomes like a cycle and repeats. Is so the feeling comes up, the energy of the feeling comes up, and then we kind of break off into storylines. So like, oh, why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't feel this way. Like, it's okay. And some of those things might actually help us, but if we're not, if our body's not buying it, or our mind's not buying it, like, we're trying to sell ourselves like everything's fine, but it's like, no, we're not convincing ourselves. Then that's okay. Then that might be a nice sign. Like, okay, that's not. Yeah, I'm not buying it, and maybe okay. Maybe I need to kind of go a different angle, and going into the body itself and feeling the kind of energy and emotion, and that actually might give us the kind of resource, or kind of clue us into something else, like kind of clue us into a deeper presence with ourselves. And generally, so we can break off, and then what that kind of ends up being is a bit of a denial of the reality of what we're experiencing. It's almost like we're denying our experience, because it's uncomfortable, or it's difficult, or it's like, if I have this anxiety, how can I work? And and there's kind of fear of it's going to overtake me. But the body actually can be a really nice resource in that way, if we can stay with the present experience of this, the sensation, like what the anxiety feels like. If there's just energy moving, like just feeling, oh, it's just energy moving, and so we're not taking on a good or bad language, and we're kind of taking a language like we're just describing, like the texture, the feeling, the temperature, maybe the color, or whatever, kind of a different kind of language around it that keeps us kind of more in an immediate relationship with it, as well as making sure that we're breathing, and doing deep breathing, because with anxiety, the breath kind of gets lost. And there's another breathing trick that's actually it's for kind of calming the nervous system down, that I've actually found kind of shockingly effective. It might just be kind of my disposition or whatever, but breathing in. Say you breathe in 3, like for 3, counting 3, 1. I'm breathing 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever, and then breathing out a little bit longer than you're breathing in. So say I breathe in for 4 seconds, I breathe out for 6 seconds. Or maybe you start with 3. I breathe in. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe just kind of staying in that range. And I guess that there's been some neuroscience done. It's kind of a therapy technique that's shown to actually kind of calm the nervous system down quite quickly. Yeah. So and then just kind of see where, if you can stay with the energy, use resource of breath, and just kind of see where it goes. What do you hear?
Yeah, the definitely the just staying with that energy. It gets hard sometimes though, because like, I still have to interact with everything too. So like the first day, oh my God, the first day that they called me back, I made it to the office, but it's like I didn't even do my job. Like I just sat there and like just kind of feeling what the body was feeling. And now, it's just like getting there, I'm okay and I can do my job now. But like, yeah, it's still getting there. But it is definitely like that, the story, that gets tied up with that feeling. And it's like, even if I'm focusing on, the Starbucks at the end of the trip, the tightness in the chest starts, and then the story starts right away. And I know, and I'm like, I even remind myself, I'm like, oh, maybe this is what they were talking about, that second arrow, like Buddha in that story, the guy gets shot by the arrow. And then there's a second arrow with all this story that follows upon it. I'm like, just feel that first arrow. I guess maybe just practice, because it's awful tricky. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar to what we were discussing last week. Actually, it's yeah, the yeah. If we can have a sense of curiosity and openness, not curiosity in a sense of engaging with the conceptual mind, but just the kind of bare awareness, like, open, not judging. Even the tightness in the chest, not a problem. It's just tightness in the chest. We can feel that. If it starts to kind of compound, because sometimes like mind can be really fast, especially with anxiety. If the tightness in the chest feels like it's kind of making it stronger, than maybe feel your feet. So anxiety is usually going up. So sometimes just doing the opposite, try to go down. Breathe in the belly, feel the feet. But if it feels like it's in a workable range, like a reasonable range where you can feel in the chest, like we can just try to have an accepting attitude towards it. But it's tricky because like our ego, like it just sneaks in. We're like, okay, I'll accept it for a few seconds and like let's move on. Let's hurry it up. I was told if I accept it, then it'll go away. Like it's like we really have to try to be open ended. That's the challenging trick. But it actually that acceptance actually kind of releases the resistance. And so the resistance is kind of the symptom of the fear, or the kind of, the fear comes up, and then there's this kind of resistance going on, and that's kind of an antidote resistance, just accepting and trying to be open, and then maybe using some breath, or maybe trying to anchor also try to anchor in the present somehow with the sensory kind of thing. Sometimes looking, because one of the beauties with our sensory experiences, they're not conceptual. So, they spark concept, they spark labels, but eyes just see, ears just hear, body just feels, those just smells. And then the stories come, but that immediate first kind of moment is actually not conceptual. So sometimes if it does feel like, trying to bring your awareness into some sort of immediate kind of thing in the room that feels, that can draw you kind of in and out of the head as well. But yeah, it's not easy. Mingyur Rinpoche, have you heard of him, the Tibetan Lama? He suffered from panic attacks early in his life, and he talks about it a lot. Trying to remember, there's
What was his name again?
I'll put it in the chat actually. He talks about working with anxiety, and there was a podcast, I think it's the Wisdom podcast, the Wisdom Publishing Company. They do a really great, they have a lot of great, a lot of Buddhist teachers from all different traditions. They have a Dharma chat with them. But he was saying in a similar vein, like the anxiety became kind of a friend, like, oh, here's anxiety again. And here's my friend. Maybe it doesn't, at first it's not like that, but another analogy I really like is like we're just kind of getting, like in our meditation practice, it's like kind of wanting to catch up with an old friend. So if we're catching up with a friend, we find a nice cafe, we sit down, kind of, and seen the friend a long time, and the friend just can't stop talking. It's like your friend hasn't spoken to another human in like 20 years. And so we're like, oh, wow, okay. And, kind of imagining how we would be with our friend, actually, like if, part of us knows like, oh, they really talking, they're kind of really unwinding stuff, but we want to be present and compassionate and kind, but also like, okay, and then eventually the friend kind of calms down, and then we actually have a nice, genuine conversation. They kind of get their stuff out, and then settle. If we can stay kind of present with them and kind of compassionate, but at the same time, staying grounded, not getting carried away into their story too, because we notice it's like they're a little bit kind of like strong or buzzy or whatever. And so then that starts to establish this really close the friendship. And that can be kind of how we relate to one of Jack Kornfield called, I think, one of our recurring or incessant visitor. Like we all have our visitor or recurring, the neighbor who comes by all the time. And so if we're always kind of distracting and kind of finding other ways that doesn't quite actually remedy, it doesn't really quite meet what we need in that moment, then it's going to keep coming back. And if we can have that kind of open relationship where we can just kind of listen to it and see what it feels like, what's going on with it, then it kind of eventually, moves on. And we develop a friend, and like Mingyur Rinpoche said, oh yeah, like I don't really have the anxiety or panic attacks anymore. It's like I miss my old friend. And I think he's not just saying that. I think that it's strange. Like it is the kind of how we relate to it. There's kind of this amazing potential with even difficult things. Like we actually can. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of the Dharma. Like no matter what the circumstance is, there is a potential for liberation. There's a potential for peace. So, yeah, they're not the easiest of friends, but if we can kind of open ourselves to it and listen to what they have to say and kind of be with it. It can be kind of amazing. Because usually what then happens actually is we start to develop a deeper presence, sense of presence. Because oftentimes those kind of responses or those kind of friends are some sort of need that we have that kind of leads us into something deeper. Oftentimes. Yeah.
Would it not, because like listening to you talk about how he thought they were friends, and like, you know, your friends are sharing information with you. So this anxiety, if you could sit down with it and ask it questions, it could probably tell you its story and almost like a little bit of an insight into your karma and like how to adjust your karma to purify it more. Like, I mean, that all of this is coming up for karmatic reasons as well, right? So there's got to be something, there's a reason. So if I could, not necessarily personify it, but be friends with it and just learn more instead of like, it's an enemy, I need it to go away, I need to cure it, I should be better than this, because then that's just part of the story. Like, I'm a meditator, why am I anxiety? Like, and yeah.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that one I try to apply that one all the time. It doesn't work at all. but you know, I've been doing this for a long time. Like, what's yeah, it's kind of not listening. Yeah, I like the word karmatic. I've never heard that before. That's really nice. It's a nice blend. Yeah, you know, one way you can train with it is so to, you know, practice it on your cushion. So, you know, when you're in a safe space, so you have your meditation space, you have a set time you want to work with, you know, kind of settle yourself a bit. And then when you feel, you know, relatively settled or ready, then you can kind of bring that anxiety to mind. You know, it's not too hard to kind of, you know, you either imagine that scenario or just kind of, you know, the body memory of it, just kind of bring that feeling of anxiety up present with you. And then within that place, then try that kind of mindful, kind of accepting, openness, kind of welcoming. And again, if we can stay rooted in the energy of it, so it's within the kind of Buddhist kind of healing tradition, we're kind of, when we say we're listening to what it tells you, if we can try not too much narrative if possible, like, you know, maybe some image comes up, or maybe some sort of word, or, you know, or something kind of comes out of that, like allow that and notice it, and, you know, hear it. And again, just kind of having that kind of open presence and just be with it, kind of feel it, and see, and kind of see where it goes. One of my meditation teacher always says, just let it go where it needs to go. Stay in the body and just kind of let it go where it needs to go. And then in the Buddhist tradition, we have eventually the emotions will liberate themselves if we can just be with them and not kind of push or fight or suppress, or, you know, if they just kind of move, and that's kind of like the karma just kind of moving on. Like, it's like, okay, because karma, you know, in terms of kind of these karmic experiences, it's usually like there was some sort of response we did that just kind of contracted, and kind of, you know, we kind of reacted, and that left to some sort of thing, and, you know, kind of deposited in us that needs to be paid attention to eventually. You know, we kind of, like, part of us kind of shut down in a particular way at a certain time because we needed to, or that's just what we're used to, or it is what it is. And the kind of releasing that karma is just like we're witnessing it without reacting this time. So it's like that anxiety is something that's come from the past that just needs to be held, witnessed, open to, and allow it to kind of have its course of lifespan, and it will pass. It kind of passes, and that's kind of releasing that karma, or passing through that karma.
Is that also like what they were saying? Like some of the teachers that I've heard were like, life is like a dream, where like the dream images are like your karma coming up, or like reality, your karma coming up, and if you don't react to it, there's no more karma created. So yeah, okay, I would always get confused like that. I'm like, this is not a dream, like I actually feel pain, but now, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and actually Mingyur Rinpoche's brother, who's also there's 4 brothers, are all Rinpoche's, amazing teachers. Sukni Rinpoche, he has a really nice way of saying the feeling, question, the feeling's real because you feel it. You can't say I'm not feeling it, right? But is it true? So the feeling's real, but is the story true? And he gave an example. He also had kind of a panic attack when he was visiting somewhere, and he was going to cross the sky bridge that had a glass floor, and he was like, no. and he's saying, he was like, okay, my mind's like, I'm going to do it, but then he said, just his body just responded like, no, we're not doing that, actually. We're not crossing that bridge. And he felt a sense of panic. And yeah, and he liked to kind of use this phrase like, okay, the feeling's real because I'm feeling the anxiety, the fear. The fear is real, but is it true? And so, so he kind of worked on both levels. So he stayed with the feeling of it and accepted and kind of allowed the feeling to be there, but at the same time, is the fear true? Like, is the logic of it true? So, like with the bridge was safe, and a lot of times anxiety is a protection, it's a self-protection response, which can be, we need that, actually. We need that. It's a wise response. At times we need that. We do need fear at certain times to survive. But it becomes habitual, and it activates when it's not necessarily needed. And so then it actually impacts our capacity to live, like, because it's exhausting to, we can't work a full-time job and feel anxiety all day. It's exhausting, so it actually, what's arising initially as a kind of protection response is actually getting in the way. So that's the issue. And so then that, like, okay, the feeling's real. Oh, okay, yeah, great. Anxiety's here. Interesting. That feeling's here. That what that energy is, and maybe again, kind of letting the language go away, the judgmental language, and just kind of the texture of feeling. And then, is it true? Is the anxiety true? And kind of that way, both are being kind of held. Because sometimes we just want to deal with the cognitive level or the kind of the logic or whatever. And then there's a kind of suppression. There's a kind of weird relationship that happens with the body aspect of it. And so then we kind of don't actually allow it to kind of move through. And so then you would kind of qualify that as like a reaction. And so then you're kind of instead of releasing that karma, living through that karma, you're storing it away for later. And eventually it will come. Yeah. So, yeah, it really can be it's not easy because they're very it's difficult emotions are called difficult for a reason, but they can be opportunity for um, yeah.
Well, and I do know my anxiety is a master manipulator of logic. It can give you any reason whatsoever for me to stay home, no matter what.
Mhm.
But it is like the inappropriate attention is what get like the logic is there, like totally any one of us could die like leaving our house, right? But it's that inappropriate attention and like, trying to, fight that logic and being like, there's a billion people that leave their house every day. I work with 200 people that are going to be in the office, so it's like 200 people have made it through this. Like, obviously, this logic isn't, I mean, it's logic, but it's misproportionate and inappropriate attention, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think, yeah, in terms of that last kind of approach from Sophie Rinpoche, I think that kind of real but not true. I think the real part is important because it's softening around the emotion. So it's real. It's like giving. It's almost like the anxiety is just like freaking. It's like attention starved friend who's just freaking out, and it just needs somebody to love it, kind of thing. Like, okay. And yeah, if you've ever had a friend who's going through something like, I do this all the time, like the cognitive level, like, oh, it's okay. It's like, no, it's not actually, because I'm freaking out. And so, like, and usually that kind of approach is like we're trying to get rid of that emotion, so then it doesn't work. So the acknowledging that it's real is kind of giving giving it attention, kind of holding it, giving it a sense of love. Um, so we're not battling that level of our experience. And so then it's like once you've established that sense of trust and connection, then you can kind of throw in a little bit like, if you calm somebody down, like then you can throw in like, hey, like also it's probably going to be okay. Like, then you can start to kind of clear it's like, you start to educate, like once you kind of, um, like was it Maslow's hierarchy or whatever, like you kind of create a sense of comfort and like giving them tea, like you've kind of honored their presence enough to where they like respect you, connect with you, and then you can kind of bring in then you can teach, like you create the teachable moment that way. And so then it can maybe give you some time to listen. Like it will, because then there'll be a genuine kind of relationship with it. Because sometimes when we're like just trying to like giving our friends advice or whatever to calm them down, like a lot of times we're just uncomfortable with their discomfort, and we're giving them advice just to get it over with kind of feeling, and there isn't that kind of willingness or openness to really connect with what they're actually feeling. Does that make sense?
There's a phrase going around the internet right now that says, in the whole history of calming down, no one has ever been calmed down by someone saying, calm down.
Yeah. Every time I experience this, like I actually do it and connect, and like I'm just like, why did they teach us this combative thing? Like it's so it's like so counterintuitive. Like, no, if we really accept it and be friends with it and kind of open to it, it's actually beautiful. It's like anger, anxiety, even depression, some levels of depression. Whatever the emotion is, actually, that kind of turning to it in a kind of open, friendly way, it just totally changes the whole thing. Another he's a doctor. It's a really beautiful kind of view. Gabor Mate, he has a lot of videos. He also he called those kind of responses, he called them dumb friends. So they were a friend at some point. Anxiety, protected us, fear protected us, or maybe the anger actually protected us at some point, just put up a boundary with somebody or something that needed to happen in the moment. But then they come around to protect us when it's just the wisdom's not there. It's just So we kind of need, it's similar in the Buddhist tradition, we talk about compassion and wisdom. We need those two wings of the bird. We can have both of those qualities present in how we're relating to our kind of difficult emotional habits. So if we can have the compassion element towards ourselves, for the feelings that we're feeling, because it is pain. So having compassion for ourselves, the pain that we're experiencing. And maybe also having this kind of compassionate relationship. And then once that's there, then also having this kind of wisdom aspect where we can start to cognitively kind of rewire the story. But only if we're not, trying to do calm down, calm down. It's totally fine. Everything's fine. And so our meditation practice helps us develop that capacity for that kind of sensory present, that in the moment presence. So presence in our body. So if you meditate, there's settling practices that are based in sensation in the body. That's what I've been using. I used to use breath, but then I've done body scans where I'm kind of waking up my kind of awareness of sensation throughout the body, and kind of using that as my kind of anchor to develop that presence. So then, so when it does come up, if we can stay rooted in some sort of presence, kind of present feeling. Essentially last stuff was sharing with last week. I had to do this practice actually for my school program, my counseling program. And I had to pick one, and I was sitting, and I was feeling just a bit of irritation at the time. I had to stay with the irritation, and I kind of went to the body with it, and then that kind of irritation kind of moved into something else, and then it kind of turned into sadness, and then it actually just kind of, the whole thing just freed, and I actually felt good. It's kind of this kind of organic process kind of happened, and just moved on, and it's kind of like the storm clouds come through, and then it kind of storm did its thing, and I felt a genuine gratitude for the irritation that I usually dismiss as something that's I shouldn't be, why am I irritated, or but the irritation actually kind of allowed me to kind of become more present, and that kind of opened with what was actually kind of going on for me. I was able to kind of bear witness to that, and then it just kind of passed. Beautiful process. And you could say one aspect of our Buddha nature, that there's this, our mind, our Buddha nature actually naturally will go and naturally seeks wholeness, and naturally seeks awakening. You know, if we can just kind of get out of our own way with the kind of trying to change much, like what actually happens is this kind of the Buddha nature kind of will bring us into that place of wholeness. Be without the resistance and the awareness and compassion. Yeah, and it's similar, like the dream experience, the dream analogy. Like, so yeah, we still feel in our dreams. So it's like, yeah, so we're not denying. Again, like the vision of the dream is not the problem from Buddha's point of view. It's the kind of contract, like taking it real, and it gets solidified and claustrophobic. But if we actually just feel the dream, don't deny, like, oh, dream is real and the feeling is real in a sense, but again, it's not true. And there's some sort of like feeling in space. So we're not denying life, but the life is kind of naturally free. That's one way of looking at dependent arising emptiness, is like life is always will happen forever. It's happening forever. Movement is happening forever. Energy is happening forever. But it's naturally free. And the suffering actually is when it's when we freeze, contract, fight, struggle. You know, there's some kind of or the opposite, or we just try to deny that it's happening when it's obvious. So, easier said than done. Unfortunately. Yeah. Wish us all luck. You know, we need a little bit of luck. Sometimes it feels like that, like, I just remembered what to do in this moment. Like, nice. Cool. Any last comments? Questions before we finish up?
Just thank you so much for all of your time.
Yeah, beautiful question. Yeah, thank you for bringing it into our discussion today.
And thank both of you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, maybe we can just briefly dedicate. Is there any positive energy, any insights that may have arisen during our discussion? Dedicate them that they may become causes for us to awaken to our own full Buddha potential. So that we can be of lasting value to all living beings without exception. So that they can also awaken their full potential. And may the supreme heart of awakening, bodhicitta, where it hasn't begun to grow, begin to grow, or it has begun to grow and increase unceasingly for the welfare of all. Thanks again. Good evening.